When a 60-year-old widow falls for a mail-order husband, her daughter sees a gold digger. The moment Betty Wilkins pressed the send button on that laptop, everything changed. Her heart raced like a wild horse, pounding against her ribcage. Who knew a late-night scroll through some sketchy website could lead to a whirlwind? At 60, you wouldn't expect a widow, gray hair softly tucked away, to dive into the world of mail-order husbands. But that was the inkling of something ridiculous and thrilling, wasn't it? Little did she know, behind the laughter and surprise, lurked jealousy and danger like an unexpected storm breaching the horizon. The picture on her screen glowed, a man with sparkling blue eyes and a smile that could light up a room. His name was Marco, claimed to be 50, yet he felt like a mystery wrapped in a riddle. What was a handsome man like him doing on a site like this? Questions buzzed around her mind, buzzing like relentless bees on a hot summer's day. His profile spoke of adventure and romance, painting a tantalizing picture of love that both excited and scared her. Was this a fairy tale, or was she about to step into a trap, as her daughter Cora, a fiercely protective 35, caught wind of this escapade, her brow furrowed with suspicion. She raised an eyebrow, skepticism wrapped around her like a tight cloak. Mom, really? A mail-order husband? Sounds like a gold digger waiting to strike. Tension grew thicker than smoke in the air, raising alarms that echoed in Betty's mind. What if Cora was right? Indecision gripped Betty, twisting like a knot in her stomach. Just then, Marco's phone call shattered the silence like glass breaking. Betty's heart raced at the sound of his deep voice. He was charming, attentive. Each word wrapped around her like a warm blanket on a cold night, pulling her deeper into his charm. But was it all a facade? The erratic pounding in her chest cried out for caution. Every laugh she shared with him felt intoxicating, yet each passing moment sliced through her excitement with a hint of fear. What was Cora seeing that she wasn't? Hey, before we continue with this amazing story, I need to give you an important heads-up. Many subscribers have reported that YouTube unsubscribed them without warning. Take a quick second to check the red button below to make sure you're still subscribed to the channel. I'd hate for you to miss any of the exclusive content coming soon. And while you're there, smash that like button, it really helps me out with the algorithm. Oh, and tell me in the comments, which city are you watching from? I love getting to know every amazing person who's part of this community. Your participation makes all the difference. Let's connect. As the sun began to set, casting shadows over Betty's living room, unease skittered across her skin like icy fingers. Was Marco genuine? Or had she unleashed an unexpected monster with his charming facade? Just as waves crashed onto the shore, so did a realization hit her. Was this new chapter going to bring joy or heartbreak? All those questions hung heavy in the air, treading a fine line between destiny and disaster. What was lurking behind that disarming smile, waiting to unfold? Betty paced her living room, the soft fibers of the carpet resembling the tangled thoughts swirling in her mind. The clock ticked, each second a reminder of her growing uncertainty. Marco's voice lingered in her ears, smooth as silk, but with an undercurrent she couldn't quite pinpoint. What was she getting herself into? Just then, her phone buzzed on the table, breaking her reverie. Cora's name flashed across the screen. Betty hesitated, biting her lip, her heart torn. She could already hear her daughter's voice, dripping with skepticism and concern. But Cora had every right to worry. This wasn't exactly the most conventional path for a widow. "Mom, I'm coming over," Cora said bluntly when Betty finally answered. "We need to talk about this Marco guy. I don't want you to get hurt." Her voice held a blend of frustration and love, an echo of worry that went right through Betty. "You've got to trust me, Cora." "I'm not naive," Betty replied, trying to keep her tone steady. "I just want to explore something new." The words tasted foreign on her tongue. Could she really be exploring the notion of love again? As dusk draped her home in shadows, a tiny flicker of excitement began to simmer under her skin. Maybe this was a chance to reclaim a piece of herself that had long lain dormant. Yet, Cora's voice echoed louder. What if Marco wasn't who he claimed to be? Suddenly, her laptop chimed, a notification lighting up the screen. It was a message from Marco. "Can't stop thinking about you, Betty," it read, accompanied by a small heart emoji. A flutter raced through her chest. Was he earnest? Or was his smooth charm just another trick? Her fingers hovered over the keyboard as another wave of paranoia washed over her. What if he was deceitful, tracking everything she shared? She imagined him handsome, smiling, but hidden like a predator in the brush. But wouldn't that just be a reflection of her fear? What if Cora's instincts were overreactions born from the worry of a daughter about to lose her protective role? A sharp knock jolted her from her thoughts. It was Cora, bursting through the door, her face flushed with urgency. "Mom, we have to look into this. I did some digging." "Digging? What are you talking about?" Betty asked, trying to maintain composure, but the apprehension clouded her heart. "I found something you need to see. It's unsettling." Cora pulled out her phone and swiped through the images. Betty leaned closer, her breath hitching in her throat. There it was, a picture of Marco. But this time, his eyes were not just filled with charm, they sparkled with something darker. "How did you find this?" Her voice was barely a whisper, apprehension washing over her like cold water. "I looked deeper, Mom. I think he's not just looking for love, I think he wants something from you." Panic seized Betty. The walls of her quaint living room closed in, suffocating her in fear and confusion. What could this stranger, this beautiful stranger, truly want? Was it all a lie? Cora's voice trembled when she added, "We need to confront him now." Betty glanced toward the window, heart pounding as shadows danced outside a sight that mirrored her internal turmoil. Should she face Marco, the enigma that set her heart racing, or retreat back to safety? "Okay," she finally managed, despite the fear gripping her insides. "Let us call him and find out." But just as she reached for her phone, a new text from Marco flashed on the screen, sending shivers down her spine. "I think we need to meet tonight. I have something important to discuss." Fear surged through her like a lightning bolt. What had she drawn into her life? The night loomed ahead, thick with uncertainty. Would this be a night of revelations or ruin? What waited for her in the shadows? Betty's pulse quickened, and the desperate tug of fate urged her toward an encounter that could change everything. Could she walk into the night and confront the man behind the charming smile, or was this the beginning of her greatest mistake? Betty's heart raced as she stared at her phone. Anxiety twisted her stomach into knots. The clock ticked louder now, mocking her indecision. Marco's message felt like a trap, a siren song pulling her toward danger. Cora's worried face lingered in her mind, and a wave of guilt crashed over her. "Mom, you don't have to do this," Cora pleaded, her voice rising, filled with urgency. "Let us just call the police if you think something's off. You don't know him." But as the seconds stretched into an eternity, Betty felt something solidify inside her. She couldn't let fear dictate her life any longer. After losing her husband, every decision had been draped in sorrow and self-doubt. "No," she said, surprised at her own firmness. "I need to know what he wants." Cora's eyes widened. "But what if he's dangerous? You don't really know him. You just met online. You could be walking into a nightmare." "I appreciate your concern, Cora," Betty replied, her tone softer now but resolute. "But I have to face this." Cora opened her mouth to protest again, but Betty waved her off. "I'll be careful. Just give me some space." "Can you do that?" With a reluctant sigh, Cora pulled out her phone again. "Fine. But I'm tracking your location. Text me every 20 minutes, okay?" Betty nodded, reassuring her daughter as much as herself. "I promise." There was a strange thrill mingling with her fear as Betty slipped on a light jacket, the the fabric brushing against her skin, igniting the embers of determination. She stepped into the night, the cool air wrapping around her like a shroud. The shadows were deeper, the streetlights casting long, eerie beams across the pavement. As she drove toward the cafe where they had agreed to meet, visions of Marco's charming smile surfaced. What would he say? Did he really have something important to discuss? Each mile felt like a countdown to something bigger than she could understand. Pulling into the parking lot, her eyes caught every detail: the flickering neon sign, the chatter of patrons inside, a cacophony of normalcy that felt distant. Her breath hitched as she parked, the reality of what she was about to do settling heavily on her shoulders. She stepped inside, the bell above the door jingling, drawing curious gazes. Marco sat in a corner booth, his profile sharp against the soft light. He looked up as she approached, and his eyes lit up with that same magnetic charm that had captivated her from the start. But now, it felt tainted. "Betty!" he exclaimed, flashing a smile that sent a mix of warmth and dread through her. He stood as she reached the table, and she couldn't help but notice the way he moved, confident, almost predatory. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice smooth, yet there was a weight to it that made her pulse quicken. "What did you want to talk about?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady, back straight, despite the storm brewing inside her. "Let me explain," Marco said, his gaze intense. He gestured toward the seat across from him. "There are things you don't know." Betty hesitated, but then sat down, challenged by the mystery in his words. The cafe filled with the smell of coffee and pastries, but her attention was locked onto Marco. What secrets lay behind that handsome facade? The tension coiled tighter as he leaned closer, his voice lowering to a conspiratorial whisper. "What if I told you I'm here for more than just love?" Betty's heart raced, blood pounding in her ears. What did he mean? The shadows felt darker now, tightening their grip around her. "What do you want, Marco?" she demanded, her resolve hardening. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Trust me, Betty. You'll want to know." As the unanswered question hung in the air, an unsettling chill slithered down her spine. What did this man want from her? Truth or deception? She was on the cusp of discovering something profound, and she could only wonder, would it save her or tear her apart? Betty braced herself as the night thickened with secrets, and the looming threat of revelations promised to unravel everything she once believed. What lay beneath the surface of Marco's charm? Marco leaned forward even more, the intensity in his eyes piercing through the chaos in Betty's mind. "You're not just another woman to me, Betty. You're part of something much bigger." The word sent shockwaves through her. Anxiety twisted her stomach, each word like a blade. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, her voice barely a breath above the bustling cafe noise. "I need your help," he continued, his tone steady yet urgent. "Something dangerous is happening, and you're my only way out." "What kind of danger?" The curiosity mingled with fear, setting her on edge. Was she being pulled deeper into something sinister? "They're watching me," Marco said, glancing around as if the shadows had ears. "I can't explain everything right now. Just know that if I'm not careful, I could lose everything, and so could you." A chill snaked up her back. "Lose everything? What do you mean?" The question trembled on her lips, thick with dread. He exhaled slowly, his expression a mix of desperation and gravitas. "I got involved with the wrong people. I thought I could manage it, but things escalated. They're ruthless, and they'll stop at nothing to get what they want." His gaze bore into hers, searching for understanding. Betty's thoughts raced. "What do I have to do with this? Why me?" He paused, swallowing hard before responding. "Because I think you're the only one who can help me get out of it before it's too late." His voice lowered further, an edge of entreaty creeping in. "I need you to trust me. Whatever you think I am, I promise you, it's not who I really am." Inside her, conflicting emotions swirled: doubt, fear, a flicker of intrigue. "Trust him?" The man she barely knew? Yet there was a part of her that felt drawn to him. Widowhood had dulled so many colors in her life, and if there was even a hint of excitement, she craved it. Marco leaned back, the urge to reach out and grab her hand barely contained. But they might come after you, too. I don't want to put you in danger. Every word only added to her confusion. What do you want me to do? The question left her lips before she could reel it back in. Curiosity infiltrated her sense of caution. A smile crept across his face, but it was strained. I need you to meet me again. Tomorrow at the old bookstore downtown. What? Why there? The sudden shift made her uneasy. Something in his eyes sparked again a mix of excitement and peril. Because it's safe. It's where I can explain everything without being overheard. He glanced around once more, worry stretching his features. I'll take care of everything. Just trust me. The tension in the air wrapped around her like barbed wire. She opened her mouth to reply, but her phone buzzed on the table, slicing through the moment. Cora's name blinked on the screen, dragging reality back into focus. Betty picked it up, glancing at the message. Where are you? Please be careful. Her heart sank. Cora must have been pacing, swallowing every second with anxiety over this meeting. Listen, I have to go, Betty said, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. Cora's waiting. Marco studied her for a moment before nodding slowly. I'll text you the details tonight. Please, just think about what I said. As she stood, the fullness of the cafe seemed to shrink around her, isolating her beneath the weight of his gaze. Okay. I'll think. The moment she stepped out into the night, the cool breeze felt stark against her heated skin. The thrill deflated as reality crept back in, leaving her breathless and intent on the questions gnawing at the edges of her mind. What had she stumbled into? As she climbed into her car, the echoes of Marco's words replayed in her head: danger, trust, a hidden life. The night was alive with possibilities and peril. And deep within her, a chilling realization took root. Sometimes, curiosity could lead you down a path you never intended to follow. With trembling hands, she sent a message to Cora. I'm on my way home. Just give me a minute. But as she started the engine, a shadow flickered in her rearview mirror. Someone was watching. As her heart pounded against her ribcage, she caught a glimpse of a figure lingering in the distance, a chill creeping up her spine. Who was it? What did they want? The thrill of uncertainty gripped her. Something was coming, and it wasn't finished with her just yet. What other secrets lay hidden in the night, waiting to come to light? The figure in the rearview mirror shifted, blending into the shadows of the streetlight behind her. Betty's heartbeat quickened, each thud sounding like a warning bell. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, knuckles widening as she peered into the darkness. Anxiety bubbled in her chest, threatening to spill over. Just as she was about to drive away, the figure stepped forward. It was a man, his features obscured by the night, but the menacing stance told her everything she needed to know. He was here for Marco. Betty's pulse raced. What had she gotten herself into? The thrill of the unknown turned poisonous, cutting through her earlier excitement like a knife. She couldn't leave just yet. Without thinking, she leaned across the passenger seat, grabbed her purse, and fished out her phone. Her fingers trembled as she texted Marco, I think someone's following me. Seconds stretched like hours. The man loomed near her car, his head slightly tilted, eyes drilling into her, scanning the interior as if he could see through to her very soul. Cold sweat trickled down the small of her back. What if he knew? Just then, a response pinged on her phone. Stay calm. Don't let him know you're aware. Drive to the bookstore. Drive to the bookstore? The place Marco mentioned? Could she really trust him? With a shaky breath, she turned the ignition, the engine roaring to life, shattering the silence of the night. As she put the car in gear and eased out of the parking spot, the man's gaze pierced through her. Her imagination spiraled. Was he armed? Was he connected to the danger Marco warned her about? Pulling onto the road, she kept her eyes glued to the rearview mirror. The man stood there for a moment, flanked by shadows, before he started moving. Panic surged within her, urging her to speed up. Why couldn't she just have a quiet evening? The traffic lights blinked, guiding her through empty streets lit only by a waning moon. Each stop felt like a countdown of impending doom. But Marco's words echoed in her mind, "Stay calm. Don't let him know." She reached the bookstore, the neon sign flickering uncertainly. It should have felt like a haven, instead, it loomed ominously. She parked close to the entrance, glancing over her shoulder, no sign of her pursuer yet. Heart racing, she fumbled with the locks and jumped out of the car. The front door swung open into a dimly lit interior, the earthy scent of old books greeting her like a familiar embrace. She heard the faint rustling of pages turning, a sound that was both comforting and eerie. "Betty!" Marco's voice sliced through the silence, pulling her focus. He appeared from behind a row of dusty bookshelves, his expression taut with concern. Before she could respond, he caught sight of the panic in her eyes. "You saw him, didn't you?" There was a heaviness in the air, a shared fear that closed in around them. She nodded, breathless. "He was watching me right outside the cafe. Damn it. I knew it was too risky to meet there." Marco moved closer, his presence solidifying in front of her, but the shadows danced ominously around them. "We don't have much time. They're taking this seriously." "What do you mean?" she whispered, an icy grip of terror clawing at her. "They think I know where the money is hidden. If you're with me." A loud crash echoed from the back of the store. Books tumbled off the shelves like raindrops, sending a shockwave of chaos through the air. A figure different from the man outside burst into view, eyes wild with intent. "Get down!" Marco shouted, lunging toward her as the figure moved closer, the glint of something sharp reflecting the dim light. Everything shattered around them as realities collided. Betty's heart raced, thrumming a frantic tattoo against the waves of impending violence. What had she been drawn into? The thrill she once felt twisted into sheer terror, and her resolve wavered. "For every secret you uncover," Marco's voice hissed in her ear, "there will always be a price." Through the din, she caught a glimpse of the intruder's face, and horror slammed into her. She recognized him. Her breaths came in shallow gulps. He's one of them. The weight of the truth crashed down on her, and the path became perilously clear. But in this moment of chaos, she realized what she needed to do. And in the heart of the storm, questions spiraled. What was she truly stepping into? Could she escape the wrath of forces she didn't fully understand? As the figure lunged forward, a breath caught in her throat, she braced herself. The moment had come. Choices must be made, alliances tested. But above all, would she find the courage to face the threatening tide? Betty's instinct kicked in, she sidestepped as the figure lunged, her mind screaming for escape. Books scattered across the floor, their pages fluttering like trapped birds. "Don't just stand there!" Marco yelled, grabbing her wrist as he pulled her deeper into the aisles, the chaotic noise still ringing in her ears. She could see the man raising a weapon, fingers twitching like a snake about to strike. "Where do we go?" she gasped, panic flooding her voice. "Back, through the storeroom," Marco urged. The urgency in his tone ignited a surge of desperation in her. They darted behind a bookshelf, the weight of fear pressing down on them. It felt like they were cloaked in darkness, hidden from the eyes of danger, but only temporarily. As they squeezed past dusty shelves, an anguished cry erupted from their pursuer, echoing through the store. "You can't run forever." The words dripped with malice, making the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. "I know him," she whispered furiously, trying to hold on to her racing thoughts. "He's the one who came to my house last week." "What? Why didn't you tell me?" Marco's eyes widened, surprise mixing with dread. "I didn't think he would." "Now's not the time, Betty. He pulled her along, urgency thrumming in his movements. "We need to find a way out before his voice trailed off, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his features. Footsteps thundered closer, sending them bolting into the storeroom, where the smell of dust and neglect clawed at her throat. Old cardboard boxes were stacked haphazardly, half open with forgotten treasures. "We can hide in here." Marco pushed them behind a stack, their breaths mingling, wild and shaky. The intruder burst through the door behind them, eyes scanning the room. Betty squeezed Marco's hand tightly, feeling his pulse race just as hers did. She could see his jaw tightening, readying for a fight but knowing he'd have to think smartly. "Where are you?" The man's voice was sultry with menace. He prowled, making every heartbeat thud louder in her ears. "I know you're here, Marco. What does he want with you?" Betty whispered, her voice trembling. "He's part of a group searching for the money," Marco hissed, desperately whispering as though the air around them could hear. "They think I'm involved with the deal but you're not," she yelled, her body quaking with unease. "You just got dragged into this. You have no idea what they're capable of." His gaze pierced hers, a raw truth laced with regret hovering between them. The footsteps moved closer, and for a moment, silence clung to the air, thick and suffocating. Betty strained to listen, but all she could hear was her own heartbeat, pounding to a rhythm of impending dread. What had started as a simple evening had spiraled into a nightmare, a twisting labyrinth of secrets and danger. She had stepped into a web with Marco, but how deep did it go? She felt suffocated by a rush of thoughts. Could she trust him? Was he just a pawn, or was she? Suddenly, the intruder stepped around the corner and locked eyes with them, catching Betty's breath like a vice. A chilling grin split his face, a twisted mix of challenge and malevolence. "Found you. Run!" Marco shouted, shoving her forward just as the figure lunged, but she stumbled backward, her foot catching on the edge of a box. Her scream echoed, merging with the chaos around them. Momentum crashed, and everything froze for a heartbeat. Would she break free or be pulled into the shadows? The uncertainty twisted in her gut, and in that split second, everything hung in the balance. What choice would she make? As the figure lunged again, she felt Marco's grip tightening around her. Would they fight together or flee into the unknown? The question burned brightly as the darkness closed in around them, leaving the outcome uncertain, and just like that, she realized, the next step would define everything. But who would lead and who would follow? Betty's heart raced as she fumbled to regain her balance. Fear pulsed through her veins like quicksilver, urging her to move. She could see the intruder bearing down on them, a shadowy predator with a predator's intent. "Go!" Marco shouted again, his voice a lifeline in the torrent of terror. Without thinking, she pushed herself up and propelled herself through the narrow space between the boxes, her body whirling into the labyrinth of the storeroom. The sound of cardboard scraping against wood filled her ears, but she didn't dare look back. Every fiber of her being screamed for escape. The man's footsteps echoed behind them, relentless and heavy, like the toll of a death knell. Marco was still at her side, but she could sense the urgency in his movements. The darkness that encircled them felt like it was closing in, and with it, the realization that they were running out of time. "Over here." Marco pulled her toward a door nestled between stacks of boxes. She hesitated, her mind racing with doubts. What if it was another trap? But then, the figure's voice sliced through the air again, tauntingly close. "Just give me the money, Marco. You know I will find you." The menace in his tone sent chills rippling down her spine. "Now!" Marco urged, already yanking open the door. It creaked ominously as they rushed through, plunging into a dimly lit corridor. The air was stale, filled with the scent of disuse and something more acrid, like fear and sweat intertwined. They stumbled into a narrow passageway lined with more boxes, neglected merchandise hidden in shadowy corners. The sound of the man's heavy footsteps grew muffled, but Betty knew he wouldn't stay away for long. "Do you think we lost him?" she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Marco shook his head, determination etched on his face. No. He's south too close. We need to keep moving. Betty nodded, but uncertainty gnawed at her insides. She had followed Marco without question, but why should she trust him? The knot in her stomach twisted tighter as they pressed on, the weight of their situation becoming more burdensome with every step. Every choice felt monumental. Who were they now, a couple standing strong against a villain or mere prey in a twisted game? Up ahead, the corridor opened into a larger room, dimly illuminated by a flickering light overhead. Old crates lay scattered, and in the center, a long table was draped with a moth-eaten cloth. At first glance, it felt abandoned, but she recognized the danger of assumptions. "What is this place?" she whispered, fear edging her voice. "I don't know, but we have to check for a way out," he replied, scanning the room. The tension crackled in the air like static electricity. Suddenly, a noise echoed, a harsh scrape against the floor. They froze, hearts hammering in their chests. Betty could feel her breath catch in her throat as she peered into the shadows across the room, every instinct screaming that they weren't alone. "Marco," she breathed, but her voice barely escaped her lips. "Stay quiet," he hissed back, every muscle in his body coiled tightly, ready to spring. Then they saw it, a sliver of movement, just at the edge of the shadows. Anxiety twisted in her gut, and she bit her lip, forcing herself to hold back her panic. "Please tell me you know where we're going," she whispered, glancing toward the door they had entered. The sound of footsteps echoed again, closer this time, reverberating in the silence of the room. "We'll figure it out," Marco replied, but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt. It was a moment shared, each of them aware that the web was tightening. The scraping grew louder until it was a cacophony that filled the room, an ominous reminder of their pursuer. "There's nowhere to hide." A voice taunted from the darkness, freezing them in place. As the figure stepped forward, the light revealed a twisted smile on his face, confidence radiating from him. "You think you can escape?" Betty's heart sank, reality crashing down around her. The walls felt like they were closing in, and the fight in her faded as dread took over. And just as hope seemed lost, Marco squeezed her hand tightly, a spark of defiance igniting in his eyes. "We're not done yet," he whispered fiercely, and with that, they stood their ground, ready to face their fate as the figure loomed closer. But how could two stand against one? Would it be their last stand or mere prelude to something darker? The figure stepped out of the shadows, taller than she had expected, engulfed in an aura of menace. The flickering light caught the glint of something metallic in his hand, a knife. Panic surged. The air felt thick and hot, turning suffocating around them. "Back off!" Marco shouted, his voice cutting through the stillness like a knife edge. He moved slightly in front of Betty, the instinct to protect her sparking a fierce resolve in his eyes. "You think you can protect her?" The intruder laughed, a sound so chilling it sent shivers down Betty's spine. "I could have had the fortune years ago if you hadn't decided to run, Marco." "Stop. You don't have to do this," Betty called, desperation spilling into her voice. It felt absurd to reason with a man holding a weapon, but she needed a chance. "We can talk about it." "Talk?" He stepped closer, the knife gleaming ominously. "Do you think there's anything left to talk about? You're in my territory now." His words were like a punch to her gut. The realization crept in that they were trapped, with no clear escape. The boxes surrounding them loomed like silent witness to their impending doom, each one isolating them further from hope. Marco spat back, "Let her go. This is between you and me." "But you brought her into this mess," the man sneered. "And now she pays the price for your folly. You didn't think you could hide forever, did you?" Confusion mixed with dread in Betty's mind. Who was this man? Why did he want Marco? The questions spiraled out of control until their answers became irrelevant. Survival was the only imperative. Without thinking, Marco surged forward, a wave of determination sweeping him. "Run, Betty!" he shouted, pushing her back toward a pile of crates. Her instincts kicked in. As Marco distracted the menace, she dove behind the crates, her heart racing wildly. She didn't know where to go next. She just needed to survive. A loud crash echoed through the room as Marco tackled the man, taking him by surprise. The two figures wrestled near the table, the blade flashing dangerously close. Betty's breath caught in her throat as she watched, fear gripping her so tightly it felt paralyzing. "Stop. Please." She screamed, but her voice rattled in the chaos, rendered useless. Suddenly, Marco was thrown back, hit against a stack of boxes. He landed hard, a loud grunt escaping him as the breath was knocked out of his lungs. The man regained his footing, stumbling briefly before he turned to her, eyes glowing with dark satisfaction. "Look what you made me do," he taunted, starting toward her slowly, savoring the moment like a predator closing in on its prey. Each step felt like a countdown, seconds drawing out indefinitely in the thick tension. Betty scanned the room, panicking, searching for anything that could help her. There. A nearby crate tipped sideways, revealing a rusty pipe sticking out from under a pile of debris. Mustering every ounce of courage, she lunged for the pipe, gripping it tightly as she turned to face her assailant. This was it, fight or flight. There was no retreating now. "Stay back!" she yelled, feeling the fire of defiance ignite within her. The sight of Marco struggling on the ground fueled her courage. The intruder halted, surprise flickering across his twisted features. "You really think you can use that?" "How adorable," he mocked, but uncertainty mixed in his tone. In a heartbeat, this shifting dynamic hung between them, the balance teetering toward the slightest edge. Would it be enough? And at that moment, as the tension snapped and every breath undertook a significance of life or death, a loud crashing sound shattered the air. The wall behind them gave way, debris raining down like a storm. The ceiling trembled ominously, and for a split second, everyone froze, stunned by the sudden chaos. But it wouldn't last. What would happen next? Could they escape together, or would the chaos consume them all? The dust hung in the air like a thick fog, swallowing the chaos around them. Betty felt her heart race, mismatched with the surreal calmness that had momentarily settled in. It took her a blink to realize the intruder hadn't moved. He was still, eyes wide and unblinking, caught off balance by the unexpected destruction. "Marco!" she shouted, forcing herself to focus. The sight of him struggling to catch his breath on the ground was a jolt of reality. She couldn't let fear paralyze her. She could help him. With the pipe clutched tightly in her fist, she dashed toward Marco. "Get up! We can't stay here." The man, still stunned, began to regain his bearings, his own focus shifting back to Betty. He launched forward, knife flashing under the dim light, but Betty was faster. She swung the pipe, an adrenaline-fueled arc fueled by sheer determination, striking his arm. Pain shot through her hand as the pipe connected, and the man howled, dropping the knife. It clattered to the ground, a deafening sound in the tense prison of their battleground. "Marco! Now!" she yelled, tossing the pipe toward him. He caught it expertly, rising to his feet, a renewed fire igniting in his eyes. The intruder staggered back, nursing his injured arm. "You'll pay for that," he hissed, voice dripping with venom. The once confident smirk was absent, replaced by something far more dangerous: desperation. "Let us end this." Marco fired back, determination etched in his features. He advanced toward the man while Betty followed, heart pounding, mind racing. She locked her gaze on the knife lying inches away. It was a risk, but it might be their only hope. With swift movements, she ducked to the side, grabbing the weapon just as Marco unleashed a furious swing of the pipe. The intruder twisted, barely escaping the blow, but the momentum sent him off balance. It was a fraction of a second, but it was all they needed. "Betty, get back!" Marco yelled, and she moved, instinct pushing her out of the direct conflict. The man lunged again, this time aiming for Marco's midsection. The two collided, grappling for control. Angry grunts filled the air as Betty watched, every muscle in her body tense, every passing second a torment. Marco. Panic seeped into her voice. Her heart raced as she tightened her grip on the knife, the weight of it oddly reassuring. Suddenly, as if on cue, the building quaked, and she felt the ground beneath her shift. The whole structure was crumbling. She could hear the distant sound of gravel and compression as more debris fell. Now! Move! Marco barked, finally breaking free from their opponent's grasp. The intruder recoiled, desperation turning into rage. He charged again, but this time, Betty was ready. With a swift motion, she raised the knife, fierceness overcoming her fear. "Stay back!" she shouted, her voice echoing in the chaos. The man skidded to a halt, eyes flaring with fury and disbelief. But before he could respond, the ceiling above trembled violently again. Cracks spidered across the surface, and with a horrifying rumble, chunks of concrete began to cascade down around them. "Run!" Marco yelled, grabbing her arm. They raced toward the shadows of the doorway, dodging falling rubble as they fled together. The darkness enveloped them as they burst through the exit, gasping for fresh air, hearts pounding like drumbeats of survival. But as they stumbled into the safety of the outside world, a chilling thought crossed Betty's mind. What if he follows us? Before Marco could answer, a shadow leaped out from behind a nearby building, brandishing a twisted smile as the figure re-emerged, impossibly more menacing. "I'm not finished with you yet," he sneered, as the echoes of impending doom hung in the air. A fresh wave of terror surged through her. What kind of danger had they truly unleashed? Would they ever be free from this nightmare? The fresh air hit Betty like a slap, jolting her from the clutches of panic. She felt the weight of the night pressing against her, a leaden reminder of how quickly things had spiraled. Marco pulled her close as they darted around the edge of the crumbling bookstore, but her heart pounded for a different reason now. Was it truly over? "Keep moving," Marco urged, urgency flowing through his voice. They dashed down the alley, adrenaline pushing them forward even as dread clung to their heels. Where do we go?" Betty gasped, her breaths coming in quick, jagged gasps. The man no, the monster was still out there, hiding in the shadows, waiting. "Follow me," Marco shouted, guiding her through narrow streets, the moonlight peeking through the buildings illuminating their path. Behind them, the sound of footsteps thundered, echoing like a countdown to their doom. Betty glanced back and caught a glimpse of the figure, his eyes glinting with malice. Panic surged in her chest as she felt the weight of their situation pressing down on her. They couldn't keep running forever. "We need to hide," she forced out, pulling him toward a side entrance of a bustling diner that inexplicably remained open at this hour. Marco hesitated, but there was no time to lose. They slipped inside just as he turned, the doors slamming shut behind them. Inside, the chatter of late-night patrons drowned out the noise of the outside world. Betty's heart raced, but for a second, she felt a flicker of safety. In the stark light, she caught a glimpse of herself in the reflection on the glass. Was this the woman she'd become? A woman torn between excitement and danger? "Betty, there's no time," Marco urged, seeing her hesitance as an opportunity lost. "We need to get out of here." "Marco, what about the police?" she blurted, frantically searching for options. "We can't. If he gets caught, he'll come after us tenfold. We have to lay low, wait for the right moment." His expression burned with intensity, a mix of fear and determination that made her think of all the choices she had made leading to this point. As they crouched down in a booth at the back, the diner patrons blissfully unaware of the storm brewing just outside, a sense of urgency weighed heavy on her heart. What if we could make it stop? What if we find out who he is? "The only way is to confront him," Marco said, his voice low but steady. "But we can do it on our terms." Her stomach twisted at that. Was this madness? The night had already torn her from the path of normalcy, dragging her into a mess she never meant to be a part of. Yet, beneath that fear, a sliver of defiance took root. Okay. But if we're going to face him, we do it together. I won't sit on the sidelines anymore, Betty declared, her pulse quickening, solidifying her resolve. She hadn't just been the widow and the mother anymore. Tonight had opened her eyes to the fire still simmering beneath her skin. They walked out after gathering their thoughts, slipping back into the shadows of the night. The streets felt different now, alive and excited, as if they buzzed with hopeful promise. As they rounded the corner, Betty felt exhilarated and terrified all at once. Where to, then? She asked, her voice steady. Head toward the park. It's open, but shielded enough that we can see if he approaches, Marco replied, urgency palpable in his every move. The moon bathed the park in a soft glow as they stepped onto the path, shadows merging and shifting around them. Betty felt the electricity between them surge. Whatever they faced, it would be united. Together, they could tackle the unknown. Head dash on. As they neared a bench on the edge of the park, a dark figure emerged from the other end, and fear prickled down her spine. Was it him? Stay back, Marco whispered, positioning himself protectively in front of her. We know what you are. Betty's voice rang out, emboldened by the night's revelations. The figure stepped into the light, a face she recognized with a flicker of disbelief. I have a deal to make, he grinned maliciously, his eyes glinting colorful with threat. I'm armed. Betty threatened, the knife still tucked in her jacket pocket. He laughed cruelly, the sound cutting through the night air. What do you think you can do with that? You're playing with forces far beyond your understanding. You don't know what you're up against, Marco interjected, step forward with a steel determination. We're not afraid anymore. As the man lunged, desperation clawed Betty's insides. She pulled the knife, her hands shaking, and pointed it toward him, but he had learned from their mistakes. Marco rushed forward but wasn't quite quick enough. With a sudden burst, the man lunged toward Betty, but Marco was there, shoving her aside and intercepting the blow. The knife clanked against the ground, rolling away like a forgotten hope. A chaotic struggle ensued as they wrestled around the cold grass, fists flying, raw and primal. Betty, get up! Marco gasped, grappling for control, his face a mask of determination. She felt a surge of adrenaline, urgency pushing her into action as her heart thumped violently. I can help! She yelled, sprinting to the side, narrowing the gap between them. Finally gaining the upper hand, Marco pinned the figure against the ground, legs spread and ready to keep him there. This ends now, tell us what you know. The man spat, anger flashing in his eyes as he struggled. You think this is over? You'll regret this. Tell us who you work for. Betty demanded, stepping closer to Marco, her voice fierce, the strength growing within her. Just let me go. You think I'm afraid of you? Let him go? No chance. Marco hissed, squeezing tighter. With a sudden powerful thrust, the man bucked, sending Marco tumbling away. Betty stepped back. You need to surrender. We're not letting you keep hiding. In a twisted dance of chaos, they circled each other once more, both sides knowing the stakes had risen to dangerous heights, but in that moment, Betty felt a sense of completeness filling her being. She no longer felt like the widow or the mother, it was the fierce woman overcoming obstacles with ferocity she never knew she had. Enough! Marco shouted, racing toward Betty's side. Together they stood there, united, ready to face whatever the night brought, eyes blazing and hearts ignited with shared courage, and as the man's smile faltered, they saw what they had worked so hard to defend, an unshakable bond forged in adversity, allowing Betty to take the plunge she once feared, leading them into a new dawn, one filled with possibility. Whatever happens next, she whispered to Marco, we do this together. And just like that, with hearts tied to fate's inexplicable thread, they prepared for battle, ready to confront whatever awaited them beyond the dusk, tethered in solidarity and the undeniable spark of trust, finally facing the dark with the fierce brightness of hope. This was the moment she had chosen, no going back now. Living between shadows, uncertainty became a compass, guiding them toward the light again. Their adventure had only begun. Before we wrap this up, I need you to do something so important. You need to subscribe now. Don't miss out on the next exclusive stories that are waiting just around the corner. Smash that like button now, because every click fuels this journey. And hey, we love hearing your thoughts. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. What do you think will happen next? And don't wait even one more second, share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Your support makes a difference, and only true fans understand the importance of standing by us through every twist and turn.